Wow. The Blacklist and Last of Us season finale, literally on the same night as the Oscars. That's tough. That is tough. So, what's up, everybody? So, welcome to another episode of, I guess I'm going to call it my entertainment industry series on my channel. I'm not sure, again, what I'm going to call my channel at all, but or really, entertainment industry series. It seems terrible and clunky and horrendous, but it is what it is. So, having started these videos right around Oscar season, I'm sort of a bit behind and kind of rushing. This is a video that's kind of going to come, I guess, sort of out of place from what I would have liked to do with the entertainment videos. The flow is going to be a little bit off. I was trying to build like weekly, monthly sort of thing so that everything relates and it sort of builds on one idea from the previous video to the next. But here we are. The Oscars is literally today. So I am filming and trying to get this video out as quickly as I possibly can. So you probably have read the title already. And the question is, do award shows still matter? So as we all know, the Oscars is pretty much the crown jewel of all award shows. It is the one that comes at the very end of, I guess, the entire award season. You can make an argument for the Tony Awards and what their season is and when it starts, when it begins, all that stuff. But pretty much the Oscars is the one that comes at the very end. It is going to cover the entire previous year, right? And so because of that, in recent years, people have wondered, based mainly on the Oscars, but then it has, I guess, tentacled its way out to all of the other award shows. They've wondered, do award shows matter? And it's mainly because the Oscars have been dipping in the ratings for the better part of pretty much the last entire decade. We have seen record low ratings multiple years, like in a row, year after year, beating the previous year. The hosts have been, I guess, sort of bland. Yes, they had a few interesting things that are memorable, but not really in any sort of meaningful sense. We're having Jimmy Kimmel again. He's okay. I prefer him more so as like his talk show host gig over all of his Oscar everything, all of his Oscar work so far, but he's okay. And I think that probably the last good host that we had, maybe in the last decade, is I feel like there's almost a tie between one of the times that Ellen hosted and Seth MacFarlane when he hosted that one time. Although even Seth MacFarlane was like, I don't know if hosting a show like that was a bit. I don't know if that was really in his wheelhouse per se. So let me just say a few things first about award shows. And about my viewing of award shows. So growing up, Oscars was like the thing. It was the one award show that I basically had to see every single year. And I used to watch the musical award shows like the Grammys, and I think I also used to watch the MTV Awards, the MTV Video Music Awards, as well as the MTV Movie Awards for a little while. There were maybe a total of I would say like 5 years in which I watched the Golden Globes. And I was really never an Emmys guy, which is weird, seeing as how I watch so much TV. Oscars was the crown jewel of essentially all of them, because we all know that the movies for a very long time pretty much set the standard for basically all of Hollywood. Like musicians even wanted to be there. They wanted to be in movies. They wanted to have a song nominated for an Oscar. The Oscars was a big deal, and something happened, I guess maybe around 2018, 2019. First off, let me say that I was incredibly disappointed by the fact that in 2017, I believe it was, the 2017 Oscars covering the 2016 year, that La La Land did not win the best film. Now, I know a lot of my black peers disagree with me, and they say, oh, Moonlight should have won because La La Land was just your stereotypical movie about white people falling in love and all this stuff. And again, I'm not anti-black, but I hadn't seen Moonlight for years, so I kind of let it go because I was like, well, since I haven't seen the movie and I can't compare the two of them, maybe Moonlight is a phenomenal film. And so I just recently saw it, literally within the last year or so. And I have to say, I was quite disappointed by the film. To me, it was very short on story. And as a writer, that's one of the things that I look for the most. It just didn't feel cohesive enough for me as a story. And so I was really disappointed at the whole debacle, but I still held on for like a couple of years after. And then I was just kind of done in 2018, 2019, maybe even it was 2020. I can't remember, but I have not watched the Oscars since at least 2019, at least 2019. It's hard to express how big of a deal that should be, because the industry should essentially take notice of that alone on its own. Just the fact that, again, I am someone who still wants to be within the industry, and yet for some reason I don't want to watch literally any of its biggest award shows, because for some reason I don't seem to care as much anymore. Again, when someone who wants to be in the industry essentially stops caring about the industry and their most important nights, that's when you know that something something definitely needs to change. And it's not even that, well, the award show is too long, or the jokes aren't funny, or the award shows get too political and they're too preachy or not. No, it's not any of that. Because if I'm being honest, I know my history, and I know the history of a lot of film and a lot of cinema. The award shows have always been those things. The award shows have always been too long. The award shows have always been kind of preachy, depending on your political stance. They've always been these things. It's just that maybe we're noticing them more now, but they've always been that stuff. So, circling back to the actual question at hand is, do award shows matter? And so, again, we first have to break it down on, do awards matter? So, there was a documentary sometime in the early 2010s that came out, and it was entitled, I might be butchering the name. I'll probably add a screenshot of the actual film, but I want to say it was entitled That Guy from That Thing. And of course, it had a follow up a couple of years later, said that girl from that thing or that woman from that thing. But essentially, what it was is that it was a documentary about character actors, right? So you have the top line actors, you have the stars, right? And then, of course, most of the other actors are going to be character actors. Of course, you have the star, the supporting stars, and then most everybody else is a character actor. And so one of the things in that film is basically what we'll talk about here is that they had a segment in it talking about the impact of awards and whether you win, whether you're nominated, how that could impact an actor or actress's career. And basically, it was rather depressing to learn that for the most part, there were some character actors in the film that had been nominated and had even won, I do believe, some big time awards. Maybe not Oscars, but they had won maybe like Emmys or the name escapes me for what the British call their awards, but they had won some British awards as well because they had a few foreign actors here and there. And they were saying that essentially the effect on their career was minimal to almost nothing. And so this is something that we somewhat hear even now today is that just because you win a big award, and it almost doesn't matter at what point in your career you win it. That does not guarantee you almost anything within the actual industry. So, in other words, we can point to some of our cherished actors or actresses or some of the people who are sort of just around. And we can look at their careers and the career trajectories that they've taken after winning awards. So you have somebody like Mark Rylance. For those of you who don't know, Mark Rylance won Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. So he won an Oscar a few years back, or maybe more than a few years. I want to say he might have won it in 2016. For Steven Spielberg's Bridge of Spies at the time, which starred Tom Hanks. So it was, it was an okay movie. It wasn't like classic Spielberg in which it was family oriented. It was a Spielberg wartime movie, specifically talking about the Cold War and the Berlin Wall, right? And Mark Rylance, is he a household name now after having won that Oscar? No. Are people going to rush out to see a Mark Rylance film because he was in it? No, not usually. Is he now suddenly making big bucks? Generally, probably not. And again, the reason for that is because the awards are... even within the industry, it is a very complicated question to answer on whether the awards actually mean something. Yes, you may have won an award, but it doesn't mean that you are a box office success, right? And so there's always this disconnect between the money guys or money girls, and the potential for great performances and great performers. And so what tends to happen is that if you are not someone who is already a star and that people know your name, or people remember you from something, in general, the winning or even being nominated for an award, while it is an esteemed privilege and honor, it also doesn't mean almost anything. Like it doesn't make getting work easier. It might in fact sometimes even make getting work a little harder. In most cases, not all cases, I think there used to be something back in the day, but in most cases, it doesn't even mean that you're going to garner more money or a higher paycheck. It simply means that you now have a statue. You have essentially a very nice looking paperweight or something to put on your mantle that says that you were the best at what you do for at least 1 year. So it's hard to say that, at least from a business standpoint, does an award matter? Sort of, kind of, but no, not really. So that's a soft no there, that no, it doesn't matter. What generally happens is that sometimes you will get a boost as a performer or as a winner or nominee. You will get a boost for roughly about 2 years in your career. And you then have to prove that you can spin that straw, essentially, of the award into more gold, just not go on the stage, but go in the box office. Now, if you do somehow manage to spin it into more gold on the stage, then Hollywood does take notice. Like, if you win multiple awards over the course of multiple years in a tight time frame, then people will start to really notice and say, okay, there might be something there. So from an industry standpoint, it's a soft no. Then we transition over to creatives standpoint, right? So we're talking about the peers, your peers in there. Does it matter? Again, in this case, it would probably be a soft yes. Generally, when you are up on that stage, or even when you're nominated, it does mean that you have risen to a certain level of achievement that everybody wants to acknowledge. So you have to understand how the Oscars and how some of these award shows set things up. And each one is a little bit different. But the Oscars, the way that they set things up is that the people within that particular category, the people who are practitioners of that particular craft, nominate the people who are in that category, and then it's open to essentially everybody in the academy to vote on who they thought was the best. So in other words, actors nominate other actors, directors, other directors, writers, other writers, and so on and so forth. So when you are nominated, it's basically a bunch of other writers coming in or a bunch of other actors coming in and saying that, yeah, we think that your acting was one of the best performances that we've seen this year. And of course, we should know because we do it ourselves, right? And when you win, it's even more of a surreal and just charging moment in your life, because it's saying that not only do the actors believe that you were good, but then also other people in your industry that you work with also believe that you're good. And so from that point, it does take on a certain level of importance and meaning, mainly because these people are saying that not only do they respect you, but a lot of them are essentially saying that they would have no problem and potentially want to work with you. When people want to work with you, it is always a good thing. And especially it's a good thing because of the fact that sometimes people, your peers also can have multiple jobs, multiple hats within the industry. We've seen that before too, stars come in and they'll step in and start producing their own films and television series. And so they can switch from just being the talent to being on the business side of things. So it's always good to have people who say, yes, I want to work with this person because they're so talented, because they are just as potentially awestruck as normal consumers that sit on their couches or sit in dark theaters and watch this person do their thing. So that's always good. It can be somewhat of a curse though when people, well, when people even within the industry try to, I guess, knock you down or disagree with the fact that you have won or that you've even been nominated. And of course, we've seen this kind of controversy before. We saw it just this year with Andrea Riceborough. I think that's how you pronounce her last name. She was nominated. She sort of snuck in, and she had an incredible campaign to get herself nominated for, I want to say it's Best Actress, but it could be Best Supporting Actress for a film that most people have not heard of, especially the general public. But she got nominated. People thought that her performance was good. People thought that her campaign for the performance was good. And so she's there. But I would say that she has more than shown that she is a good actress in other roles and that people seem to want to work with her. That's a whole nother thing, and I'll talk about that probably in a different video. But yeah, winning an award or even being nominated for an award, and this is why they always say that just being nominated is such an honor, even though, of course, they want to win. Everybody wants to win. But it is a huge thing just to be nominated. It really is, because your peers are saying, yes, you were good. And you might have even been better than me in a particular role that came out this year. So it's a big thing for people within the industry, the creatives. So then we move on to the third topic, which of course is the biggest and most important topic, is that is it important to the actual consumers, to us, to fans? And again, even there, it is a complicated answer and a complicated issue. I would say I would err on the side of a cautionary yes. It's not a soft yes, it's a cautionary yes, which is on a little bit even more of a soft territory. So I'll give you an example of this. When I first conceived of these videos, my original take was going to be what I wanted to do is that I wanted to center most of my criticisms on a particular piece of work. It was a television show that I thought epitomized most, not all, but a very high amount, a very high percentage of what I thought was wrong with Hollywood, or some of the problems that Hollywood has been having. And that show, again, I'm not going to name the show. I'm sure some people are going to guess it. It's not that difficult to guess. But that show had it had actually been nominated and won for a particular award. Specifically, one of the main actors or slash actresses on the show was nominated and won for that show. And so when the show first came out, if you looked at the ratings for the show, the ratings were kind of terrible. They really were just bad. And yet, for some reason, the creators of the show, the studio behind the show, and the channel that hosted the show, they all claim that, yeah, this show is a hit. It's a phenomenal hit. It's big. So you've got to watch it. Was I believing it? No, I had already seen the show, and I thought that, But then the person at the lead actor, they won. They won a very big award. And the fact that they won became serious news. And so then when the show finally did come back, after, a hiatus, just like every show went on hiatus for COVID. When the show finally came back, the numbers, the ratings had actually quadrupled. It had quadrupled from the previous season. And so I was thinking to myself that, yes, I can add in word of mouth, but in somewhat discounting word of mouth because the show is not really that good, I would have to I would have to attribute a quadrupling. Like I could see a doubling of viewers, but a quadrupling of viewers has to, in some form and fashion, have been influenced by the fact that this person won an award for being on the show. As much as we may not acknowledge it or like it or what have you, the fact of the matter is that humans are always curious. We are always going to be curious. So when we see something sticking out, whether it's for a good reason or a bad reason, we are more prone to be curious about that thing and, I guess, investigate it, if you will, on our own terms. I think that a lot of people, when they hear that something is award winning, in a similar way to how I watched Moonlight win over La La Land, it does get you curious. I guess that's one of the key elements to staying alive, in to having a project stay alive in Hollywood, is that a project has to generate some kind of interest, some kind of buzz. It has to go above and beyond the marketing. The project has to live beyond the marketing in order to truly become something special, right? And so winning an award helps it to do that. It helps it to push it beyond what it normally would be or would be seen as. And that's one of the reasons why I would say that, yes, awards do matter to people. But then there's also the controversy, the back and forth controversy of things that win that maybe shouldn't have won. Um, I feel like I might need to talk about that in another video because that in and of itself is just as complicated. We have, for better or for worse, we have taken the idea of an award show and we've said that, well, an award show should be the biggest meritocracy around. The problem is that essentially we look at awards and we figure that people are, especially people within the industry, that people are essentially stupid, crazy, or losing their minds, or, insert whatever adjective or superlative you want to put in there, when they don't think the exact same way that we do, when they don't pick the things that we pick. So it then starts to supposedly lose all credibility, quote unquote, when these things that we feel like never should have won win. And it does get political, both actually within the industry, because there is a almost political campaign in order to win an award from whatever creative is doing it. But it's also political from our side too, simply because of the fact that, again, we hold certain ideas and ideals about various pieces of entertainment or pieces of art to a very high esteem. Everybody tries to make their case and make their point for why something should win. And instead of allowing for there to be different ideas about why something should win and whether a film is important for that year or what have you, we almost get mad and sort of go to our separate corners to say that, well, the award show is just stupid. It's dumb because, again, they don't award this, they don't award that. So, and maybe to some extent they are. Maybe they are. There have been controversies and all sorts of just horrendous takes on the Oscars and what they mean and why people voted the way that they voted, and all sorts of things like that. I remember another one of the reasons why I stopped watching the Oscars as of late is because of what happened in, I want to say 2012 or 2013, when the film 12 Years a Slave came out. It was not that it was a slave movie. And my book, A Journey, my book, The Good News, again, that it's not, for me, it's not really a slave book, but it tells the story of Juneteenth. And so it's going to be a trilogy. So look for part 2 out sometime this year. Part 1 is already out on Amazon. I'll put a link in the description below. But anyways, 12 Years a Slave, it wasn't that it was a slave movie that ticked me off, or even that it won. I thought it was a fairly good movie, a fairly good put together movie. It was honestly the way in which the anonymous voters of the movie treated the movie. And if these are still some of the same voters today, which we literally almost every single year we get some anonymous people coming out and saying why they voted or will vote the way that they voted. And the worst part about it is that in some senses, some of these people seem, and again, you have to understand before I say this, you have to understand that most of these awards academies, with the exception of the Golden Globes, most of them are made up of thousands of people within the industry or on the peripheral parts and aspects of the industry. So there's tons of people. So it's just taking one or two comments from a few people is not indicative of the entire process or of the entire voting body within these awards. But during 12 Years a Slave, there were a lot of people who copped to saying that, yeah, I didn't even watch it. I didn't actually do my job here in trying to award this movie. I just voted for it because, well, I thought it was important. Hearing that, especially being a black man, it almost always brings me back to the idea of of tokenism, that essentially there's a bone thrown to a person of color or some sort of minority or protected class or underrepresented class group, just to basically get them to shut up for a while. And the fact that, well, it was a ton of people who didn't even watch the film, but they voted for it anyway. That's not what this is supposed to be about. But then you also have people who do that for all sorts of other kinds of films as well, in that it wasn't like a black thing versus a white thing. There were people who admitted that, yeah, they didn't vote for a white movie because it was too popcorny, it's too this, it's too that. They didn't want to vote for a comic book movie because it's a comic book movie. The separation between the regular consumers and the people who control these awards is so, it sometimes seems so vast that it's it makes it easier to say that, yeah, these awards and these award shows don't have meaning. But even still, like, again, I would say that they do still have meaning, just based off of the fact that they can generate heat alone. And so then the last sort of thing, and like I said, I'm sort of rushing through this, trying to hit every single point, but just know that I was going to talk about award shows in a few different videos. My original plan was maybe like 15-minute videos, and it was going to cover for like a full week most of the stuff. But I'm trying to get out pretty much everything that I can on the subject here, and I still haven't done it. But the last thing sort of is that from a consumer side, I wanted us to just for a second step back and take away the mask and the adornment um, of the stars and of all the people in Hollywood. Okay, take away the fact that that some of them, and again, this isn't even all of them, and it's especially not everyone who is nominated for an award. My greatest example of this is he's a black guy. I think he might have been African, but he was living at the time in South Carolina, and he was nominated for an Oscar for the film Captain Phillips, starring Tom Hanks, and this came out a couple of years back. He was basically broke. Like, he was literally broke at the time. He was talking about how broke he was. I think he had made like $100,000, but for the film role. But you have to consider the fact that, one, the film was actually filmed like 2 years prior. He had to pay 10-15% of the $150,000 to his agent and his manager and all this stuff. So he really didn't have almost any money. So step back and look at these people not as millionaires, not as super famous, and remove any sort of jealousy that you may have. Stripping all of that stuff away, all of it back, we are left with humanity. Okay, humanity in its rawest form. And so when we look at it, treating these people simply as humans, it is okay for us to acknowledge that as humans, regardless of who we are and how humble we are or how humble we think we are, or, our quietness, our Western stoicism, what have you, deep down, we all want to be acknowledged. We all want to be appreciated for the things that we do, especially when we feel as if we've done something that is meaningful, that is purposeful, that maybe gives us purpose, that is helpful to others, or something that we put our heart and soul into doing, into accomplishing. And I think that, again, circling back to the idea of, are these award shows, not just the awards now, but the actual show, are they still, do they still matter? Are they still relevant? I think that in some aspect, yes, they do. And the reason mainly is not because they are filled with controversy and, Oscar's so white, or that movie should not have won over that movie, or because they spur dialogue, or because they help to market new and either new movies or new TV shows or what have you. No, I think that the reason why they are important is one of the biggest reasons why they are important is because they help us to, or at least they should, if we are open to it, they help us to acknowledge the fact that it is actually okay to want to be appreciated. It is okay to want to be acknowledged for the things that you do, for the contribution that you make in this life, regardless of what that contribution is. Obviously, yeah, we have actors and actresses, and they make a certain contribution, and you can say that it's not important all you want to, but it does hold at least a certain purposefulness, a certain meaningfulness in some people's lives. And I think that, again, just being human, it's okay to say that sometimes we need to be appreciated. I think that seeking, again, it's okay, I think, for us to sometimes acknowledge the fact that we want to seek out a certain level of approval or acceptance from our fellow man, from our fellow humans, from our fellow people, from our friends group, or from our work colleagues, or from our peers in general, or from family, or just from friends. It's okay to say that we want that. Now, again, you don't have to just walk around and say that every single day. And yes, some of you probably will say, well, what about all the fan appreciation and things like that? And yeah, that is good. And it is something that is necessary. But I think that also just the fact that, again, your peers, when they come in and they tell you that, wow, you've done good, it's different. And I don't care whether you are a mechanic or a janitor or a whatever. The fact that at some point, I think we all want our own day in the sun, even if it's just for one day, to be appreciated, to be acknowledged, to have love or adoration heaped on us, even just for one day, by the people that we find to be most either relevant or important, or that know what they're talking about. It is something. It is something. And I think that the award shows are really supposed to remind us of that at the end of the day, we are all just humans, and we can act like we're stronger than the others, or that we don't feel this thing that other people do. But let's keep it real. Most of us do still feel that thing. And sometimes we don't get the big acknowledgments, the appreciation. But I have oftentimes compared award shows to like a wedding. For most people, most adults, a wedding is kind of the only time in which they are surrounded by people and they get to acknowledge publicly that they've accomplished something, even if that accomplishment is just it's not really a simple accomplishment, but it seems like it is because so many people do it. But even if it is just a simple accomplishment of finding, falling, and securing love in one's life, this is almost like that, to where, again, we can acknowledge that we kind of need this. Humans need to feel appreciated for something that they do in this life. And sometimes that's just to remind ourselves that we exist, that we are here, that we have made an impact, that we are living, that we are alive. And I think that that's what the award shows are supposed to do. So again, for me, do the award shows still matter? Even though I don't watch any of them, I think that yes, they still do matter. Yes, they still are. Again, they don't hold near the same level of importance in my life. And I'll acknowledge that, yes, some of it is bitterness. Like I said, I'm going to give pretty much any and all of my criticisms. I'm going to couch at least 15% of any and all criticisms that I have about the entertainment industry in just my bitterness, my jealousy that I haven't been able to make it and haven't been able to get there. 15% off the bat, like, you're just jealous. Yeah, okay, sure. I acknowledge that. But I think that, again, even though I don't watch them, I think that they do still hold some weight. Even with all the controversy, even with all the imperfections, they still hold a certain level of importance, even if it's not in our personal lives. So I would say that for everybody out there, for everybody who's listening to this video, who's watching this video, who's who's agreeing or disagreeing. I hope that no matter what job you're doing, no matter who you are, no matter who you choose to love, no matter who loves you back, I hope that you also, at some point in your life, can have your day in the sun, can have your day in which you are acknowledged acknowledged and appreciated and adored for doing what it is that you feel is meaningful to you or is purposeful to you, or just for doing a good job. And yeah, I know sometimes that isn't sometimes it's not going to be a big thing. Sometimes it's just going to be a bonus at the end of the year. Like, oh, you did a nice job. Here's more money. Sometimes it's just going to be a pat on the back. Sometimes it's just going to be a handshake or a subtle and nearly quiet thank you. But again, it's those kinds of acknowledgments that help us to remind ourselves that we are human and that it's okay for us to feel a certain level of pride and gratitude. Okay, like, yes, pride comes before the fall, but you don't have to give in to pride. You can have a little bit of pride in what you do, in who you are, in how you are. And I think that's okay. And I think that if we allow for these award shows, beyond their politicism, beyond the fact that, oh, it's potentially a bunch of rich people in a room clapping themselves on the back, beyond that, if we can allow ourselves to remember that it is okay to acknowledge good stuff in our lives, then I think that award shows will always have a certain place in life. So yeah, that's just how I feel about it. I still don't have a sign off. So